This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University. Today I want to talk about why you need what I'm calling freedom money. I already made a video about the digital prison coming to Europe, about CBDCs, and in that I talked about how you can turn your country into an open-air prison. First thing you do is you ban tools of self-defense. This was done in Europe, in the UK, and Ireland in the 70s and 80s. You ban tools of self-defense so that families cannot protect themselves from criminals, because the only people who end up having these tools of self-defense are the criminals and the government as well. So you're really at the mercy of whether the government wants to protect you. Number two, you define free speech as being anything that the government says that it's okay to say, rather than anything that the government doesn't like. So in other words, you ban what's real free speech. And this makes it much easier to keep everyone hypnotized and repeating government talking points like safe and effective, unprovoked, sharp as a tack. These are some of the phrases we heard from our governments over the past 5 years. Next, you arrest anyone who says something online that the government doesn't like. This happened recently in the UK. Here's 6 police officers showing up at a family's home to arrest the parents in front of their children simply because the parents complained about their local school in a WhatsApp group. And it's quite fitting that, of course, Orwell did come from this place on earth. Final ingredient in the recipe for a perfect open-air prison: freeze the money of anyone who speaks out against the government or its policies. Now, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, as we discussed in that previous video, which I'll link to below, CBDCs are the easiest way to create programmable, easily censored money. So they must be resisted at all costs by citizens. But even now, even without having a CBDC, even in what used to be considered first world countries, governments have been freezing the money of people who resist the totalitarian control of their speech and their thought. We saw this happen in Canada under Trudeau in February of 2022, when Trudeau began to freeze the bank accounts linked to the peaceful trucker protesters. If you're enjoying this video so far, please help to support this channel's educational mission. Hit the subscribe button, that does really help. Leave a like, comment, question, suggestion for a future video. Share this video with a friend or a family member. We also saw something similar happen to Nigel Farage in the UK, who had his bank account shut, not for falling below the wealth limit. This was the fake excuse. Of course, they published a retraction, the BBC did. That was basically because his publicly stated views were at odds with the bank's position as an inclusive organization. So they froze his bank account, or they made him withdraw his money, and they shut down his bank account for purely political reasons. And now we see something similar happening in Ireland as well. Irish teacher Enoch Burke lost his salary after refusing to use they, them pronouns for a student. This escalated. The Irish government and the Irish banks then froze his 40,000 euros worth of savings because he refused to walk back what he had said or refused to use the pronouns. And then what happened in the last few days, his bank account, his savings account, was actually emptied by the Irish courts in this standoff, leaving him with a zero balance, which he shows if you want to watch this video. As his post points out, despite the seizures, the directive that triggered the case has not yet been tested in court for constitutionality or lawfulness. Again, this is a terrible, terrible thing to do, to steal someone's money simply because you don't agree with their politics. And as a Christian teacher, I think this guy has a perfect right to what he did and what he said. So in conclusion, you can ignore the pronoun issue for now. It's sort of to the side in terms of discussing this, but the bigger issue here is whether you lean more right-wing or more left-wing. You do need to remember this. If you choose to weaponize the police, the courts, and the banks against your political opponents, when those political opponents inevitably and eventually take office again, they will weaponize the police, the courts, and the banks against you. We've seen this happen in the US, where there was all this lawfare against Trump, and it looks like he's going to be doing the same thing against his enemies. It's a really bad precedent to set. I don't necessarily blame Trump for doing this, and it can be fun to watch, but it's a bad precedent. This is not how democracies should be run, and it's also how civil wars start, so it's a very bad idea. Further conclusion, which is more relevant to the Bitcoin we discuss on this channel: the money that you hold in the bank is not yours. It's a bank liability that may or may not be paid out to you, and probably won't be when you need it the most, as is the case here for Burke. There's another problem that most banks are levered 10 to 1, so there's not nearly enough money in the bank for everyone to withdraw at the same time. This is the classic problem with fractional reserve banking. Fiat money itself is also a melting ice cube. Fiat money loses its purchasing power year after year after year, making you poorer and poorer, even after you've been a good little citizen and paid taxes on that money when you first earned it. So just say no to fiat money, say no to US dollars, say no to euros, say no to yen, say no to Canadian and Australian dollars. Instead, opt into freedom money, because Bitcoin is a bearer asset with zero counterparty risk if you hold your own keys and zero debasement risk. It's not just another central bank or IOU like you hold in your wallet or bank account today. Rather, Bitcoin is a globally accepted, neutral, ethical, digital money and commodity that's controlled by no one and that can be frozen by no one. And if Enoch Burke had moved his savings into Bitcoin before taking the stance that he took, his money would still be sitting there in Bitcoin rather than showing a bank account balance of zero. Of course, it's important to pursue the political fight as well. If you live in a country that doesn't allow you to speak your mind freely on all matters, then it's not even a real democracy. Don't even fool yourself. True democracy presupposes the ability to freely exchange ideas and thus use crowdsourcing to get closer to the truth and the political truth as well. If you live in a totalitarian regime like the Republic of Ireland or the UK or the EU, where basic human freedoms like the right to protect your family and the right to free speech are not allowed, it's a foregone conclusion that they're eventually going to freeze your money as well. You might want to consider moving before it's too late, or learn how to use Bitcoin before that day comes, because fiat money is money for slaves and NPCs and caged animals, while Bitcoin is money for men and women who still remember what freedom smells and tastes like. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video, and let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.